All right. So I'm recording this as a little demonstration as well as just to kind of explain something that I'm going to be using for a game coming up pretty soon here. But it's also how you can run a role-playing game really quickly and simply online. So the system we're going to be using is called Risus, and you can get that for free in PDF form. The name here is Risus. You can just do a search for that, and you'll get this Risus, the Anything RPG. Uh, and also, we'll be using Roll20.net, and that's also pretty easy to use. I won't be going over all the functionality of it, but I'll explain some of the important things that you need in order to run that. So, first off, character creation. So it's pretty simple. Instead of having separate stats for things like strength and dexterity and skills and stuff like that, you've got what they call cliches. I like to call them traits. You can even call them skills, but they're closer to classes in other D&D things. So as examples, they list like wizard, detective, star pilot, super spy, and you can also do really specific stuff or weird stuff, ghostly pirate cook, all is one, or giant monster who just wants to be loved for his macrame. I love this stuff. Anyway, so you put points into those, and that's about it. Like, you don't have any separate, like, bonuses or skills. Like, you look at the cliches like wizard. When you've got points in that, it's just assumed you can do what a wizard would do. So casting spells, understanding some kind of magic somebody else has used, that would just be part of what a wizard does, and therefore if you've got points in wizard, you would just roll your wizard cliche, which is going to be die sixes for every point that you've got in it, in order to determine whether or not you succeed on stuff like that. So all of the cliches are mechanically identical. So, like Viking, fighter, space pirate, whatever. Like, it's all just going to be in the game. Like, you can do what that sort of character would do, but when it comes time to roll, it's all just rolling. So the balance in Risus, instead of like picking the best class, the balance comes from, do you want to be really good at one thing or like a noob at a bunch of stuff? And I don't recommend that second one, but I'll explain a little bit more on that later. For any campaign that I would take part in or run myself, I'd recommend some kind of combat-oriented skill, but a lot of these things like detective, you can imagine how that's not necessarily a combat-oriented thing, but you could easily function in a fight, whether it's a gunfight or a fist fight, whatever. But this also leads to what they call appropriate cliches and inappropriate. Like if there's a test, in some cases, like star pilot, like a detective probably wouldn't, like that skill wouldn't work in a test of star piloting, but in certain contests, like the combat system here, like an argument or a dogfight, you can imagine what would be an appropriate skill. But technically, you can use inappropriate skills if you come up with a really good reason as to why you should be able to do that, like using a cooking skill in combat. More on that later. It's kind of risky in the sense that like you have to describe exactly like how you would be using that skill, but it's also kind of like showing off, because if you actually succeed in that, you do basically triple damage. So getting into how you start off to create a character. You get 10 points to start with, and the maximum you can put into any one cliche to start with is 4 points. And then there's a special rule I'm going to be using in my game coming up called luck dice or lucky shots. Those are also something you could put points into, but it's basically like, on a scale of 1 to 6, how good is your character at what cliche you're choosing? And of course, 1's not very good, 6 is ultimate mastery, 4 is the most you can start with, and it's not a bad idea to have one thing starting at 4, because your skills and cliches, traits, whatever you want to call them. These also function as like your hit points. So the basic mechanic is if two people say get into a fight, one of them's a ninja, one of them's a wizard, then they would roll their skills. Whoever's higher wins, and then the loser loses a point for the next round. So the next, say the wizard wins, the ninja goes down one, and then the next time he goes to attack, he's going to be rolling one less dice. So let's get some examples. Over in my test, I've got a guy here. Let's zoom in a little bit more. He is a pro wrestler and a clown and part mutant rabbit. Now, I'm not going to really bother with the rabbit, but let's go pro wrestler and clown. I'm going to give him 4 points in pro wrestler, 2 points in clown. Of course, he'll have another 2 points in rabbit, but then that only adds up to 8. So I'm going to put the 2 points in luck dice. Again, more on that later. But yeah, let's go part 2, roll 20, bars and macros. So how does this work now that I've actually logged in? I've created something. I've got this map. I've got some tokens here for my guys. This guy over here, let me zoom in a little bit more. Whoop. This guy's Voliminar, the wizard. He's a wizard 4, licensed clinical neurologist 3, and then Cajun chef 3. So he's good at 3 things. One of these things he's pretty darn good at, 4 dice. For rolling the dice, you can either type roll /roll 1 dice 6, and then boom, it gives you a random number, or you can create a macro. So I've got macros down in my lower left-hand corner here for 1 die, 2 die. This comes in handy because your skills are going to be going up or down throughout the game. How do you create a macro? Well, you go up to the very upper right-hand corner. There's a little gear. You click on that. It says My Settings, and you've got macros. It shows which ones I've created here. I'm going to create one, so plus add. And we'll have one for 7 dice, so 7 dice 6. And then the action, as I previously showed, is just /roll, and then 7 die 6. So that's 7 6-sided dice. Save changes, and now I have to click on the in bar, and all of a sudden it just shows up. Alright, so this is going to represent the skills. Now, as I said, those are also basically your hit points. Once you go down to 0 in a skill, then you're out of a fight. You're knocked out or killed or whatever. So it's nice to have little health bars to show that. So let's click on the token. Now you've got 3 circles up here, and that's where you would put in numbers for hit points, skills, whatever. And you can also make that a bar. I'm going to click on the gear here, and that shows me a bunch more stuff. And over here on the right, you've got bar 1, bar 2, bar 3. These are the same numbers that are going to be in those circles, but if you put numbers in both sides, like let's say bar 1 is going to be my pro wrestler skill, which is 4. Then bar 2 is going to be my clown skill, which is 2. So 2 out of 2, 4 out of 4, and then bar 3 is going to be my luck dice. I'm going to put that 6 out of 6, and now we've got 3 bars. Now, I think it's time to demonstrate some combat. Examples of combat, so you can get how this works, how it's going to shake down. Let's say my pro wrestler clown is going to get into a fight with a little goblin weasel guy here, and we'll say he's only 2 dice. And if my pro wrestler is going to be using his pro wrestling skill, which he's got 4 dice in, you can guess who's going to win this. But let's roll it out and see. So the goblin comes up and he's going to attack. So he's rolling 2 dice 6. He gets a total of 7. Clown rolls 4 dice 6. He gets a total of 11. So he wins. Of course, using his pro wrestling skill, not his actual clown skill. Clowning would be inappropriate in a combat between a goblin and somebody who's the goblin's trying to kill. Anyway, so he lost. So he goes down 1. I can just click on this number and then put -1, and it subtracts 1 automatically. So he's down to 1 die, and the clown's still at 4 in his pro wrestler stat. So this is going to be super easy. The goblin attacks with just 1 dice. He rolls a 1. The lowest number, that sucks for him. And the pro wrestler for 17, super easy. And of course, this is where the DM and players would be providing descriptions of what they do. Like the clown picks up the goblin, spins him around, and then throws him off the edge of the world. Because this guy just went down to 0 dice. He's toast. Let me bring this up. -1. Down to 0. All right, so how do inappropriate cliches work? Like the clowning thing. Goblin over, who's got 2 points. I'm just going to delete this guy. Because he's dead. All right, so he comes up, and let's say the clown wants to use his clowning skill to defeat this goblin. Let's give him a life bar. Using the red one. All right. So this is inappropriate, but if I come up with a description of the crazy clowning that the DM finds, suitable, then I could use the clowning skill. Now, they're equally matched, so let's see how this shakes down. But if the clown succeeds, even though he's only got 2 dice, it would do triple the damage. So it would defeat this goblin guy in 1 hit because he's only got 2 dice. So let's roll clown first. 2 dice. He gets an 11. Let's roll the goblin, see what he gets. He gets 2 and 2, so a 4. So the clown actually wins. But because he was using his clowning skill to do something crazy in combat, that means the goblin here loses 3 dice. So he's a -1. He's actually wiped out in 1 hit. So we'll delete him. There are other ways to represent a dead character. This little circle down here brings up like X's and colored dots. A lot of ways you can show somebody's dead or injured or whatever other kind of status you want to work in there. So let's see, there's also some special rules. You can read these in the Risus rulebook. I'm not going to go over all of them, but I want to go over a couple that I'm going to be using, like lucky shots, and I'll go over what they call pumping. I'm just going to call that the special attack. It could be a gamble or a risk, whatever you want to call that. So let's see, what are my examples of combat? There, special rules. Some MS Paint thing for this. All right, so let's say one of these goblins comes up that's he's a 4, or no, well, let's make him a 5. He's a level 5 goblin. Now, in creating my clown character guy here, remember I had 10 points to spend, but I only used 8 of them, so 2 points left over. Lucky shots are a resource that get renewed in every game session, so every night that you play. And the way it works, 1 point buys 3 lucky shot dice, and those are dice that you can basically just add in for 1 roll at any time. So let's say, he's got level 4 pro wrestling skill. This goblin's got level 5 goblin fighting. So that seems like bad news for my guy here, unless I use lucky shot dice. Now, whether I win or lose, I only get that dice for 1 roll. So I'm going to go ahead and -1, because I'm using one of my 6 lucky shot dice, and you can see how well, hopefully you can make out how the red bar went down 1 notch. And so he would normally roll 4 dice 6, but I'm adding a lucky shot dice, so he gets to roll 5. Let's roll his lucky pro wrestling attack first. 15 versus the goblin's 5 dice. Now he actually rolls super good, so he would win that round, the goblin. So he stays at 5. Pro wrestler, he lost a lucky shot dice, and he goes down one. -1. So he's at 3 on that skill. So that sucks, because now not only is he below his opponent, but he lost, used up a lucky shot dice. But that's what those are for. Like, it just gives you a chance, but it doesn't mean that you automatically win. Now let's try it again. I'm going to use, let's say 3. -3 lucky shot dice in one attack. So instead of 3, because he's gone down a level from losing, now he's going up actually to a total of 6. So he gets to roll 6 dice 6. Or actually, we'll say it's the goblin's turn. He's going to come back again with his 5 dice. This time he rolls an 18. Pro wrestler, now at 3, but with 3 lucky shot dice added in. So just total of 6 dice 6. He also rolls an 18. Now, there's a couple of ways you can do that. I'm going to go ahead and just do a roll-off. So here's the clown roll. He just gets a 1. The other guy, he rolls a 5. So, unfortunately, that's still going to be a tie. Let's show another rule, the pumping, or special attack. So let's keep the same 5-die goblin here. Let's bring in the wizard. So this is going to accomplish basically the same thing, but this is risking dice. So he doesn't have any lucky dice, but he's a level 4 wizard. Let's say he's going to use that skill, but he wants to risk a die. So he wants to go from level 4 to level 5 temporarily, but he's going to pay for it later. So he gets to roll 5 dice, but whether he wins or loses, he's going to lose 1 die in that skill after this roll. If, of course, he wins, that's great. The enemy goes down, but if he loses, that means he loses 2 dice. So let's have the goblin roll first. He rolls 5 die for a total of 12, and then my wizard, who's risking 1 dice to bring his level 4 wizard skill up to 5 temporarily, he rolls 5 and gets 17. So he actually succeeds. Goblin goes down 1, but he also goes down 1, which technically brings him down now to 3. But it's a way for him to fight a enemy who's stronger than him on kind of more even terms. So that's, we got the lucky shots, we got pumping. These are good, temporary things, but they're also optional rules. Different DMs might allow that or might not. Now, one last thing here. Might have skipped one of my awesome MS Paint headings here. Homebrew rules. Now, these I'm not necessarily going to recommend, but I wanted to explain them because I might allow these in the game I'm going to be running in another day or so. Buffs and healing. So the rules for Risus don't have any sort of healing in combat. There's no healing spells, no healing magic. If you survive combat, then you regain dice that you lost. But there's also rules for rolling your skills when you're not in an actual fight against somebody. So this is just like testing your skill in something, say, dangerous, but since you're not going head-to-head against a person, you're just trying to beat a number. So let's say, getting back to our guys here, let's say they're still in combat, but my wizard neurologist here wants to use his medical expertise to try and heal the clown. Again, he lost 1 die of his pro wrestling skill, so let's say he's got to beat 15 on his medical skill. So his medical skill was a 3. He's going to roll 3 dice, and he gets a 10. Now that means he lost. So he's actually going to lose 1. But had he succeeded, I would have said, okay, the clown, goes back up 1. But this represents he, used up materials, or he was trying to bandage a wound and actually made it worse. But you can see how that works just as any sort of like skill check. Now, there's another rule for, let's see, like buffs and debuffs that I want to try out. That's It's going to work the same way. You're just going to roll your skill against a target number, but I'm going to say instead of like healing, this would grant a term that's kind of part of a newer D&D system called advantage. Long story short, you get to roll twice, and if you've got advantage, then you keep the higher number, or if it's disadvantage, like a debuff, then the enemy, or if that happens to you, unfortunately, you would roll twice and keep the lower number. So let's see if the Cajun Chef skill, which is a 3, can buff the Clown's Pro Wrestling skill. So it's going to be the same thing. He's going to roll 3 dice and try and get a 15. He fails again, but for the sake of argument, if he had succeeded, then we'll say that grants the clown a temporary advantage on that. So again, his skill is 3, but if he's got an advantage here, we'll say he's going to attack the goblin. So he's going to roll 3 dice. This time he rolls an 8. Let's roll twice. Second one's a 5, so the 8's actually better. So we'll say he gets to keep the 8. And the reason you would want to do this instead of, say, adding +2 or +5 is because that's just more math. Notice I didn't do any math. I just looked at the 2 numbers and said, okay, this one's higher, I'm keeping this one. It's a little bit quicker, and Risus is good with things that are quicker. Just one last example. We were going over, let's see, I've got a character here, Timmy the Noob. So he's going to be the example of somebody who's level 1 in everything. Like he spread his 10 points out over 10 different skills. Let's say he's a pilot, bounty hunter, psychic, chess master, computer hacker, professor, vampire killer, football quarterback, lawyer, and tap dancer. So that's 10 different things, and he's going up against a level 4 goblin still. And he's going to use, say, his vampire killer skill to try and attack this guy. Now, he's only got 1 point in it, though. So he rolls 1 die. He gets a 4. And the goblin's got 4 dice. So now imagine if he rolls all 4 ones, it's still going to be a 4. But he doesn't. It's an 11. So now, even though he's got 9 other skills, because he went to 0 on one of his skills, he's out of the fight. So X. Blah. So he's going to need somebody to come either heal him or just finish the bad guy off for him, and then the fight can keep going. So this has been basic overview as well as a couple of my own homebrew rules. I hope that's enlightening, and I don't know. I'm hoping that the game is fun for everybody. And thanks for watching, if you've been able to actually watch it this far.